on the first session of the Local 10. And my buddy here, John Johnson, is the first victim. Basically, just shining a light on some local artists here, being none of us are going to be asked to the CMAs this year.
No.
So I've put together about 5 questions, 5 rapid-fire questions. None of this is rehearsed. Try to keep this to 10 minutes so everybody can not get bored by it. So first of all, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
And first question would be, what'd you do before playing music full-time?
A lot of things. Typical vagabond. I've been a sales rep in the outdoor industry. I worked for the county at one point. I worked for the city at one point. I worked for the school system at one point, all briefly. I've owned my own businesses. I was a farrier for many years.
Oh, that's got to be fun.
Yeah, I got kicked and bit a lot by horses, not the people. But yeah, I've done a variety of things. And music, with the exception of about an 8 or 10 year span in there, music was always kind of a side job since the 80s. But I most recently, before music full time, was the school system for 1 year, and that's when I decided I wanted to play music full time.
I can see that. You've done a couple of interesting things, and not everybody
No.
can claim that they've done
No.
before.
Of course, I rodeoed before, when I was a lot younger,
Yeah, that's
a
what
lot skinnier. Yeah, I rode bulls, and that's where most of my limps and scars come from.
I was going to say, paying for it now.
Yeah, paying for it now at this point in my life.
And did a little fishing on the side.
Yeah,
also.
I did. When I was in the rep business and for outside sales, I was in the bass boat industry, and I also fished tournaments for a couple years till we ran out of my wife's money fishing tournaments, and I had to get a real job again. So music is a little better. I'm not good at it, but I'm better at it than I was fishing. So.
Do you remember the largest one you caught?
Oh, in a tournament, probably. I think I caught a 9.5 pounder in a tournament one time. The largest one I've ever caught was a little over 11 pounds, but
Wow.
that was a day when it didn't count for anything but bragging rights. No money was involved.
Wow.
But
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. What made you get into music? Have you done it all your life? Was the family in it?
My dad was an amazing singer. I always say my dad sounded like Perry Como with a southern accent.
Well, there you go.
Just a smooth velvet voice. I mean, just could sing the phone book. So good. And I always heard that. He was the first. I always say he was the first singer I ever heard. My mom played the piano, and she was actually a very good piano player. She didn't like playing it, and she didn't do it very often. She played in church and later in her life, but she played piano, and they both loved music. There was always music, and it was a wide variety of everything. I always liked everything from Frank Sinatra to Merle Haggard.
Wow.
So and in old LPs, and Mom would have them going during the day, and it may be one side of a Frank Sinatra LP, then it would be next one would be Haggard, and so I got but there was always and of course I spent a lot of time with my grandfathers growing up, and they both loved the classic country music, and I always remember riding around with my granddaddy Johnson. He had an 8-track player, and he had the Merle Haggard, the greatest hits of Merle Haggard.
Had a green cover.
Had a green cover with the
I
little
remember
Chihuahua
that.
dog on it. He had that and wore that 8-track out, and I learned every song verbatim. I mean, and I played. My dad showed me a few chords on a guitar, and I played through, that way. Never, ever, ever thinking about playing in front of people. Met a guy in college who's a really good guitar player, Greg Chapman. His dad grew up playing with Jerry Reed and Billy Joe Roll and some of those old Atlanta-based country artists back in the day, and rock artists back in the day. And Greg said, "You should sing in front of people." And I said, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he said, "You can meet girls." And I said, "Okay."
Well, yeah.
I said, "I'm a bull rider. I'm already going to meet girls." He said, "If you're a bull rider that plays in a band, you can meet twice as many."
Yeah.
Well, that made sense, so that's how I wound up in music.
Chances just went up.
Yeah. He lied, by the way. That wasn't necessarily the truth. So, thanks, Greg.
Any of your heroes that you were able to meet in the past? Musical heroes.
Johnny Paycheck. I got to do a lot of shows with Johnny Paycheck. That was really cool.
Yeah,
A lot of people are surprised when I say Paycheck was a hero, but he really was. He was so good, and it was later in his life. He was sick, and not up to snuff health-wise as he was when I first learned about him, but he was still so good. And he taught me a lot about the business. He was the one that told me to have a team of lawyers, don't just have one. I don't have to do that. I'm not that big a star, but it's still, I learned a lot of that kind of stuff from him. Got to meet George Strait.
Oh, nice.
But and that was back when he was just really starting to be on the incline, and he won't take my calls now. But there was, gosh, all through the year, Lyle Lovett, Dwight Yoakam, some I met that I wasn't really that impressed by their
Right.
personality off stage. But yeah, I mean, you know how it is. You get to meet these people, and they always say never meet your heroes. That's the story you get. But I've been real fortunate that most of the ones that I've met, they've been cool. It's been a pleasure to meet them and work with them. They were pretty good people.
Right. Of course, it might take you a second to think about it. Any funny road stories that you're allowed to talk about?
No. That I'm allowed to talk about. Most of the funny road stories I have happened before the internet, and that's a good thing. Gosh, JR, I don't know. I didn't study for this test, so I didn't.
That's what makes it interesting.
Had the wheel come off a borrowed trailer
Oh, man.
going down the road in the middle of nowhere in a dark night. That was interesting.
Didn't have your equipment in it.
It did.
Oh, wow.
It actually did, and you can leave trailers beside the road in certain parts of the southeast and not worry about them, or you could then, because we didn't have a spare, naturally.
Who needs a spare for
Who
a
needs a
trailer?
spare for a borrowed trailer? I mean, single axle trailer at that. That's probably it's funny now.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It wasn't funny at all then,
I know it.
but we made it. People think it's funny, but when other people come up on stage with you,
Oh, gosh.
that's
Yes.
that's not, because we don't have a security team.
Right.
We're not Elvis
I think
or
we've
the
all been
Stones.
there.
So,
Right,
but I mean,
right.
people, and that's not really, that's more stage than road. But food poisoning,
Oh,
funny now, but not so funny then.
well, I think 30, 40 years ago, that was a popular thing.
Yeah, that's not. People laugh. That's not as much of a thing now as it was.
No.
In the '80s and early '90s, food poisoning was on the road it was a thing.
Well, you get out of these bars that you'd rather not go back to sometimes, and you stop into the nearest Circle K or a Quick Sack or whatever they called it back then. You see a burrito spinning around on a carousel thing, and you think, boy, that looks good.
Those 89-cent hot dogs at a gas station. Our good friend Johnny Bonds told me one time, he said, "You may never get a record deal, but you will get food poisoning." And I've never forgotten that. And so far he's been right, because I still don't have the record deal.
Yep. What kind of advice do you have, being as you've done this for a long time? Any advice for new upcoming musicians wanting to do this for a living?
Find a really good job.
Have a
that
few
you like.
lawyers.
Have a few lawyers. Man, you know what? Everybody says, you always hear people say, don't do it. Number one, and it's an old cliche, but it's true. You can't do it for the money. It's our job. It's what
Right.
we do. We have to get paid, so there has to be money involved. But don't do it thinking you're going to get rich, because you're probably not.
No.
You can make a good, comfortable living if you work really hard. But that would be the thing. I would say work really hard, go after it. Don't be a poser. Be
Right.
be who you are. People will like you for who you are, and be real. No matter how big a star you think you are, you're to somebody you're not. So just get used to that.
There's always that one guy.
I had a guy tell me one time, I think I've told you this before, he said, you sound pretty good for the way you sing. And every time I think things are going really great, I try to remember that guy and how much he disliked me. And, we all sit on stage and get the death stare from somebody at different
Yep.
places.
Yep.
But I would say, man, just work hard, be humble. That's,
Right.
never forget, those people could do anything in the world with their time and their money besides come hear us play. And when they do that, I know how picky I am. When I go hear somebody play, I want it to be somebody that's at least trying hard,
I hear that.
And they're not a
Yeah.
prima donna. They're not in it just for the money, because the money's Waylon said one time, and you know, I'm like you. I'm a huge. Waylon was a hero. That's one I wish I had met. He said never let the show get in the way of a song.
Right.
And I think that's, you know, whether you write your own music or you do just covers, do them to the best of your ability, and don't worry about the flashing lights and the dance moves and all that. That's great if somebody can do that. That's part of their show. I'm not knocking that. I can't do it because I can't dance. Ask my wife. I play in a band is one. So that's why, you know, I can't dance. That's why I play in a band.
That's a good excuse.
But it's a real good excuse. But that would be the thing I would, you know, just always be true to your craft, work hard, because you can't practice enough. I'm a terrible guitar player. I'm a singer that has to play guitar. But I try to work hard at becoming better at the guitar. It hasn't worked real well, as you and others have told me. but
I've never
but you
said
should have
that.
heard me. You should have heard me 15 years ago playing the guitar. But you know, that would be it, man. Just work hard and go after it. Try to write. I didn't do it for years. I'm still not real good at it, but it's made me better at picking cover songs, I think. Even though I was always real picky about the songs I covered, it's made me look at songs different when I go to choose a song as a cover song from an artist. I may go in there and just pick an album cut, and I've always done that, but I may go deeper into that rabbit hole. And I've enjoyed learning to write or you know, trying to learn to write and you know, make rhymes out of words and hope somebody wants to listen to them. But I would say that, you know, even if it's something you'll never play in public, just the craft of sitting down, I honestly believe that makes the writing part of it, and I think you and I have talked about this before, makes people a better artist.
Right.
I feel like it has me in the last 2 or 3 years since I've tried to write the 7 songs that I've got written.
We're approaching the greatest hits album by the 2099.
Yeah, I know. I hope to have mine before I hit the century mark. I hope to have my next release.
All right, well, that was Local 10. My buddy John Johnson. Tune in next time. We'll see who we can get to help us out on the next episode. Have a good one, y'all. Thank you.
See you.